On this edition of Southern Newsweek, more than 230 trucks give youngsters a ride around Dunedin. The Otago Art Society's premier art awards are on display at Dunedin's railway station. And school pupils of Western School in Oamaru take a stand against plastic. Kia ora and welcome, I'm Daryl Baser. Streets around Dunedin reverberated last weekend as more than 230 trucks took enthusiastic youngsters around Greater Dunedin in this year's Special Rigs for Special Kids event. It's the event's 28th year after being founded by contractor Greg Inch and a group of like-minded truckies. One hell of a convoy. At least 237 trucks take the idea of a Sunday drive to all new lengths at this year's Special Rigs for Special Kids. Not bad for an idea which came about over a couple of beers just short of 30 years ago and has now become intergenerational.
He was from Oamaru. He'd been on a part of the event as a special needs child years ago. Whitestone Road had given him an opportunity. He's now driving for them and he come all the way down from up there to take somebody out for a ride.
Traffic crawled on some streets around Dunedin and Mosgiel at the weekend as the large convoy of heavy vehicles created a very special day for many, including event creator Greg Inch, as family members are now fully involved.
Yeah, I got Shannon's been my oldest, been on the committee for 2 years now. Her job is to keep track of me and help me. Our youngest is busting the gut to be there.
Many vantage points between Dunedin and Mosgiel have people waving to drivers and their passengers on the day, before people gathered for a barbecue and event at the Edgar Centre. To outsiders it might look like Greg Inch does it all, however he's quick to point out that's not the case.
Yeah. No, look, like even the companies that put the sponsorship in the sausages and the money towards the food and the milk and everything else that's on the day. It's incredible. Nobody wants naming rights. Everyone just wants to give because they know what the day is about and the meaning it has.
Inch spells out the basic premise of the day.
It all comes down to taking a special needs kid for a ride. That's it. The driver. Anything else is a bonus. It's just a day out for the community to enjoy the show of trucks. The kids can catch a ride.
Drivers have come from as far away as Auckland to take part in the event, paying for their own fuel and other expenses. Many also fundraise for a handful of charities as well, with this year's recipients including Kiwi families and the neonatal intensive care unit at Dunedin Hospital. Inch says many drivers have already signed up for next year's event. In Dunedin, the South Today. A 30-minute program about Rigs for Kids 2019 is set to screen on Channel 39 at a later date. Earlier this year, more than 80% of Lakes District voters said yes to the Queenstown Lakes District Council's proposed levy. However, a Wanaka motelier says the softening tourist market means accommodation providers, rather than tourists, will end up paying the proposed 5% bed tax.
Lovely views of Lake Wanaka from lakeside accommodation. Motelier Peter Sutherland is saying Queenstown Lakes District Council's proposed bed tax, which got more than 80% of the vote from Lakes District residents in a referendum earlier this year, is not entirely fair.
It doesn't target any of the activity providers or the other commercial activity that gain from the visitors. So we think that it should be more widely spread and that would make it a lot more fair.
He says many visitors already stay in central Otago towns or freedom camping sites and only visit Queenstown and Wanaka for the day.
A bed tax only captures those that actually stay in commercial accommodation in the Lakes District. If it's spread across the activity providers, it will capture the freedom campers, it will capture the people that only come to Queenstown for the day, that perhaps they stay in Cromwell and just come to Queenstown for the day. So it's a lot fairer in the fact that it doesn't just target those that stay in Queenstown, it'll capture everyone that has some money to spend in Queenstown.
Sutherland says all signs indicate a downturn in tourists to the region.
The lead time for bookings is really shortened up, so they were sort of averaging 45 days lead time for our bookings. They're now down to below 30, so we really don't know what's going to happen. But all the commentators, and there's no disagreement, are saying that there is a softening of overseas business arrivals coming.
And this means moteliers like him won't be able to put up their rates and absorb the proposed 5% visitor levy.
To recover a 5% bed tax, we need to put our rates up by 6.5%. The way that things are looking for the future for the next 2 years, things have gone soft. We won't be able to get our rates up at all. So what will happen is that our rates will stay static and that bed tax will come out of our own profit.
A council spokesman says they accept Sutherland's calculations as correct, and while they don't show the whole picture, they do highlight some of the work the council and government will need to do. The visitor levy is now being considered by the government. In Wanaka and Queenstown, the South Today.
Artworks featured in the Otago Art Society's Premier Art Awards are currently on display at the Society's rooms at the railway station in Dunedin. The group says the first prize award attracts entrants from around the South Island. Pictures painting thousands of words. With a $3,000 first prize up for grabs, the Otago Art Society's 2019 Edinburgh Realty Premier Art Awards attracts entries from far and wide. Dunedin artist and society member Anne Baldock says this year's exhibition is just one of many held throughout the year.
Well, you can exhibit just about all year round here. We have probably 12 exhibitions a year that we put works into, but we also have a little shop at the front, and you can also put your works in there. So there's always something on display for the public.
She says the Society has recently opened up the membership criteria with all welcome.
We used to have an application process to become an artist member, but we've got rid of that because who's a decider of what's good art? And so I think anyone can join up and try their hand at art, enter exhibitions, and it's on display for the public to see and enjoy or maybe purchase.
Society volunteer Ness Kerr doesn't call herself an artist, but loves her role with the organisation.
No, I'm not an artist, but I love and appreciate art, and I feel it's a real privilege and very inspirational being surrounded by artists and their work. So yeah, I feel I've got a really lucky role here at the Art Society.
Baldock says she returned to painting after having a family and says her son still features in her work even though he's left home.
Okay, so this work's called Flatties Need Their DIY Dads, and the inspiration came from my experience with my son at university who wanted to go flatting the first year, and he often came home with stories about how there was another hole in the floor or the ceiling after a party.
Bruce Hunt judged this year's competition, with the $3,000 first prize going to Merdad Tahan for Seize the Day. The exhibition is up until early September. In Dunedin, the South Today. When Western school pupils realised how much plastic an Oamaru restaurant used when packaging their lunches, they chose to take a stand. Every Thursday, pupils have an option to order lunch from a local Japanese restaurant, and they decided to ask for change. Ask and ye shall receive. Pupils at Western School in Oamaru were concerned about the amount of plastic coming with their optional lunch from a local restaurant. Western is an Enviro school. To fit that image, children launched a campaign to persuade the restaurant to change its packaging.
So the Enviro Group have written letters to Midori asking if we could have more sustainable packaging. And Midori straight away said yes, we can do something about that. And now they are sending all their lunches in cardboard and bioplastics.
Jenny Kitchen says children have locally made sushi as a lunchtime option 1 day a week, delivered in disposable plastic containers, which prompted the student-led group to act.
Absolutely, Enviro Group children, there's a group of 20 of them, they are so motivated and so excited about being an Enviro school. They're working so hard to make us more sustainable.
She says the Enviro School's message is radiating out to the wider community, with parents coming on board as well.
They're being very helpful, and they now send their home lunches in lunch boxes with no Glad wrap, very few wrappers, and they find that the food is kept very fresh without the plastic and the wrapping. So we're really encouraging parents to keep on doing this.
The school says other organisations who supply food to the school are following suit, opting for bamboo forks and cardboard packaging. Kitchen says people are right behind the idea.
Yes, and also Peter Pitt, they've been great. They send all their food in paper packaging as well, and bamboo forks rather than plastics.
Western is one of 12 Enviro schools in the district. Enviro Schools is an environmental action-based program where young people design and lead sustainable projects in their schools, neighbourhoods and community. in Oamaru, the South Today. Still to come on this edition of Southern Newsweek, a Dunedin man creates superhero costumes at home in McAndrew Bay, and John Goldsworthy's estate of 31 tractors and other items go under the hammer near Milton. See you after the break. Welcome back. The workshop of a McAndrew Bay fantasy and comic enthusiast is something of a marvel. Life-sized Batman and Iron Man suits, along with Stormtrooper masks, fill the cramped workspace of Jason Connolly. You've got to feel for cosplay fans at times. The knights of old had page boys to help them get into chainmail armour. It's a role being filled here by ODT reporter Jono Edwards. A nurse by day, Jason Connolly spends most of his spare time creating fantasy and science fiction models and costumes. He says the obsession began 6 or 7 years ago when he started working on an Iron Man suit.
6 years ago, and I just not stopped, and I just building Star Wars, Batman, Marvel type things out of different materials.
Connolly says he was a fan of comics as a kid, a passion which has continued into his adult life. He makes the suits from a wide variety of materials.
Yeah, this Batman Ninja's made out of carbon fibre. It took me maybe 4 months to make. This Spartan Batman is just foam, so it's a lot easier to work with, maybe 2 months to make it.
What began as a solo suit-making pursuit has grown. As he's discovered, there's a growing number of adults interested in fantasy and science fiction costumes.
Yeah, there is. A few years ago, there was only a couple of us, but that's increased over the years. And like I went to town yesterday and I bumped into a few people that I've met via this, and we talk about Batman, Superman on the street. And now there's about 200 people on the Dunedin Cosplay Cabal, which is a Facebook group.
There's an old cliche about selling coals to Newcastle, or in New Zealand's case, to Kaitangata. Jason Connolly's version is taking an orc from Lord of the Rings to the North Island and almost meeting Sir Peter Jackson.
I've been to Wellington in some of these. Peter Jackson, when I took this orc to Auckland for the final a few years ago, and Peter Jackson walked past and we had an orc in a box. And I wanted to say, Peter, we've got an orc in this box, but I didn't.
He says this hobby keeps him busy out of his work time.
I just like to have a project. I like to make things. I'm always happier if I've got projects on the go. I think about how to make things, how to get a nice finish.
His creations have won him awards, and he's become a regular at pop culture festivals like Armageddon and The Edge of the World. He says his wife is understanding of his passion, although not a really big fan. In Dunedin, the South Today. Crowds gathered on a farm just south of Milton last weekend to remember the late John Goldsworthy and check out the auction for his collection of vintage memorabilia. Goldsworthy was a well-known aficionado and collector of all things Massey Ferguson. 31 of his tractors went under the hammer last Saturday.
More than 600 people inspecting John Goldsworthy's estate up for auction at Moneymore, just south of Milton. Held at a neighbouring farm on Saturday, the auction of Goldsworthy's estate was one of a kind.
I don't think in the South Island we'll see a collection like this for ever again going up for sale.
Henry says the auction gave a chance to see the wide range of vintage memorabilia John Goldsworthy had collected over his lifetime.
John was quite a hard case, been around for a long time, and come down and support his sale and have a good look at a lineup of his collection, because it was spread out. Well, it was pretty, never knew what he had anyway.
And many turned up to marvel at his extensive collection of Massey Ferguson tractors.
A very long time ago, in a different country, in a different time, I learnt to drive on a Massey Ferguson tractor. It was a kerosene and petrol one. It was on a small patch of land in the Welsh borders. I didn't know how to drive a car. My first job was to get out on the tractor and harrow a field. Never forgotten it.
Everything sold in just over 2 hours, including all 31 tractors, with the highest price being $4,800 for a BMC mini diesel tractor. But many others flew out the door for between $200 and $500.
Oh, I'd love one. I'm not sure the husband would be so keen though.
Gonna go? Yep, she goes. 1,819. Yes. 2.
Auctioneer Rob Fowler says the buyer turnout was amazing, with serious buyer interest from across the country, plus plus Ireland and Korea. In Milton, the South Today.
A friendly game of football was held at Sunnyvale Park in Green Island last Sunday to mark an Islamic holy festival. It included a minute's silence for the victims of the Christchurch terror attacks. The idea for the match came about during a meal shared by police and members of Dunedin's Al Huda Mosque during Ramadan. About 150 spectators lined the pitch to cheer on both teams and enjoy a lunch put on by the association. The match also served as a warm-up for the police team, who are preparing for a football match tournament in Napier next week. The team of Dunedin police officers beat the team fielded by members of the Otago Muslim Association 4-0. A Dunedin Railways locomotive has travelled for the first time along a short line between Oamaru's Victorian Precinct and the Blue Penguin Colony. The 140 people on board were there to experience Oamaru's most popular tourist attraction. Organisers say the inaugural trip could pave the way for the growth of tourism in Oamaru.
After weeks of planning and preparation, a Dunedin Railways locomotive takes tourists from Oamaru's historic precinct to the Blue Penguin Colony. It's taken some convincing to bring the excursion to fruition.
Just to persuade people to let me do it and understand what I'm doing is right.
The line is normally just traversed by a smaller train on Sundays, and this new trial bodes well for growing the town's tourism.
Real rep for Oamaru Steam Rail too. It's part of tourism if we can keep pushing it. Maybe able to get cruise ships here or get anything possible now.
Yesterday's excursion was used to take attendees of the 10th International Penguin Conference to visit the Oamaru colony. In Oamaru, the South Today.
Still to come on this edition of Southern Newsweek, the Otago Rescue Helicopter Trust acquires a life-saving CPR machine, and vintage vehicles raise funds for Daffodil Day in Cromwell. See you after the break. Welcome back. A new chest compression machine could be the difference between life and death at accident scenes in the south. The Otago Helicopter Rescue Trust has acquired a German-built mechanical CPR device to take over the exhausting task of performing CPR.
A medical dummy receiving CPR chest compressions from the Otago Rescue Helicopter Trust new CPR machine. The Corpulse machine allows medics to concentrate on other tasks instead of performing CPR.
Totally mechanical, it's good for about 90 minutes. We can adjust the depth and the rate of the chest compression, so it really frees up somebody who's doing manual CPR.
Fleet says it's exhausting for a medic to keep on providing CPR for an extended period of time, so this device is literally a lifesaver.
You can imagine that if one or two individuals are doing, say, manual CPR for an extended period, they're going to get quite fatigued and their efficiency may not be as good. Whereas all the thing with the mechanical CPR machine, it's going to be, the only thing it's going to tire is the battery, and it's good for about 90 minutes. So,
while there are other mechanical CPR devices in the country, it's the first one of this brand in use in New Zealand. The CPR machine and one of the intensive care units cost $130,000 and was funded by a local motoring club.
This equipment was donated by the Otago Motor Club Trust and quite a significant contribution to the Otago Rescue Helicopter.
The new machine has taken on helicopters to incidents where CPR may be required and has already been put in use in some recent rescue missions. In Dunedin, the South Today.
Well-oiled vintage vehicles rolled into Cromwell last Sunday, providing the centrepiece to a Daffodil Day fundraiser. The event was hosted by the Central Otago Vintage Car Club and welcomed members of car clubs from around Central Otago. Getting their motors running, heading for the highway. Vintage car enthusiasts from Upper Clutha, Alexandra, Queenstown and Cromwell converged on Cromwell at the weekend, taking part in a nationwide fundraiser.
Vintage Car Club branches right around New Zealand are doing exactly the same thing or similar things today, and it's One, I guess we're all in that category where we either have people directly affected in the family or friends who've been affected by cancer.
Money raised on the day is set to go to the Daffodil Day cause, and Cromwell Club member Graham Taylor is grateful for the support the event receives. He says, with a wry smile, taking part in the event gives car clubs a greater purpose than just being a bunch of older people tootling around in old cars.
And the other major reason for it is to have a national day for the Vintage Car Club where we're seen not to be such a pack of idiots and silly old fuddy-duddies and doing something worthwhile.
Several rows of vehicles, including Holdens, MG, an International truck and an Elvis, were among those on display. He says he took time away from the club in the 1990s, but has been back for a few years, and it's now becoming a family affair.
I've got 1 or 2 cars and family members involved, and I've got an 18-year-old grandson who attended his first event just recently, so hopefully he'll be around for a while yet.
Participants, including club members and members of the general public, joined the rally in their respective towns before meeting in Cromwell for afternoon tea and a chance to admire some of the vehicles on display. All money raised from the entry fee and raffles sold on the day goes to the Cancer Society's Daffodil Day appeal. In Cromwell, The South Today. Flax is being transformed into beautiful household objects by an entrepreneurial couple living in Wanaka. The start-up business, called Revology, is hoping to revive New Zealand's flax milling industry, creating items normally made from carbon fibre or fiberglass.
Believe it or not, this beautiful chair is made from processed flax fibre, as well as some bits of recycled brass and a seat made of bioresin. Alex Gouchard used to own a plastics company in France, but is now living in Wanaka and interested in doing something more environmentally sustainable.
I'm 48 now. I was like, I still want to do what I know to do, but I would like to do it differently. And let's try to do it with green materials.
His partner Monique Kelly says they'd like to do more manufacturing with fibres milled from New Zealand's native Harakiki flax. But with the growth in synthetic fibres, it's now hard to come by in large quantities.
Now that we're seeing that we need to move away from synthetic fibres and that the damage that it's doing to the environment, I think that it's a real opportunity to start looking at going back and seeing how we used to do things and the potential to use incredible mechanical properties that these fibres actually bring, because they're incredibly strong, and we know that with Harakiki. And I think that that would be something within our primary industry that we could potentially develop further.
They're hoping to revive New Zealand's flax milling industry, with flax being a fast-growing plant that can be cultivated in harmony with the environment, producing fast-growing plants with fibres that are very strong but also very light.
It's lighter than carbon fiber. This is one of the lightest materials in the world. It takes 90 days to grow from the seed to a plant. So, you know, a tree is 25 years. You don't need any irrigation to grow the plant. It has incredible good impact properties. So for a chair or a bike, even more for a bike, that's very important. So it's a fantastic material to work with.
And this chair itself is an example of the couple's attention to detail and design, being made up of 32 parts, with all parts replaceable should they break. In Wanaka, The South Today.
That wraps up this edition of Southern Newsweek. For latest news from the Southern region, go to odt.co.nz and follow Channel 39 on YouTube and Facebook. Ka kite anō.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.